Military personnel of Reddit, what's the best, weirdest, funniest punishment you've seen handed down by a superior? I once spent 12 hours cleaning screens on Windows. That doesn't sound bad, does it? Try this. Find a small wire about the same gauge as the holes in your Windows screen. Gently push the wire through the hole in the screen to make sure that the hole is empty. Repeat for 3 minutes, then look away from the screen. Anything weird with your eyes? Try it for hours. Had a guy in a warehouse drop a pallet load of assorted nuts and bolts off a forklift. Boxes broke open. 100,000 little nuts and bolts everywhere of various sizes. He had to sweep them into a pile, repair the boxes, fit each nut to a screw to make sure of the size. The pile was then inspected. Then he had to remove each nut and the screw and place the screw in the proper box. Then place the nut in the proper box. Probably 25 or 50 per box, I don't remember. Doesn't sound too bad, right? Took 3 12-hour days. He wasn't allowed to sit down. He had to bend over at the waist, pick up a tiny nut and screw, straighten up, screw them together, then bend over for another. More than 100,000 times. Think about it. My brother told me that when he was in basic, a drill sergeant yelled at this guy to beat his face, meaning to do push-ups. Said guy had no clue it meant that, and promptly punched himself in the face, really hard, and fell to the ground. The drill sergeant had to walk that one off, and my brother said you could hear him laughing hysterically as he walked behind a building. Not totally relevant, but I figured I'd share. A guy I worked with had a habit of falling asleep at his desk. He was a real scumbag. Unfortunately, he was also a 1-star general's son. They made him sit at his desk with one of those exercise yoga ball things. The sucker still fell asleep, but he would hit his head on the desk or fall over. He also decided to tell his supervisor he had an appointment, but instead took a nap in his room. They called the cops on him and had him arrested for dereliction of duty. Fun stuff. If his father is worth his salt, then he would agree with any punishment thought up for his crappy son. Got caught on basic with my iPod and I ran around the camp for near 2 hours with my iPod over my head shouting I'm a stupid FK for bringing my iPod in the field as the enemy was attacking our camp. I then proceeded to put my iPod in a plastic bag, then taped it onto my helmet, and from there on I responded to private iPod. When my instructor shouted play I had to sing, skip I had to switch song, etc. It lasted 2 weeks, even during the night when I had 2 hours to sleep. Play me Barbie Girl private. I was once in the Navy, stationed at Kings Bay, a Navy submarine and training base in rural, southern Georgia, USA, a stone's throw away from Florida. Due to this base may or may not contain nuclear weapons, there is a Marine Security Detachment Battalion something stationed there as well. The majority of these poor sods were just out of Marine kill camp, and were hot and heavy to go off to Midlististon and shoot them some towel heads. Unfortunately, they'd landed themselves in a swamp in rural, southern Georgia. Needless to say, they typically made very poor choices. Their superiors, however, normally disciplined them well. Amongst the punishments I witnessed were the following. 1. A group of Marines had decided to play soccer with an armadillo. Killing it, they were forced to perform a full military funeral for the poor creature, then stand on a guard at its grave for a week. 24/7. In full dress uniform. In the middle of the summer. Remember, this is in a swamp in southern GA. 2. I happened to be out early one Sunday morning, chain smoking and drinking coffee outside of the Navy barracks, when an interesting sight came by. There were 13 Marines. 12 of them were running and carrying a telephone pole on their shoulders. 6 in front, 6 in back. The 13th man was in the middle of the pole, hanging from it, doing pull-ups, as the telephone pole was being carried by the other 12 running Marines. After a certain number of pull-ups, he would swap with one of the carriers. 3. Speaking of, this base may or may not contain nuclear weapons. The Marines had to do regular patrols, driving slowly around in HMMWVs or armored cars around the storage bunkers and the base at large. Apparently there was a problem with the Marines in the vehicles falling asleep and running off the road. A brilliant co had the following great idea. Only one Marine would be in the vehicle, whilst the other Marine would be running behind it. If the vehicle were to start swaying off the road, the runner would awaken his driver comrade and they'd swap. It didn't take long, however. For this plan to fail, patrol vehicle went off the road, crashed, and the Marine running stayed the course, smacking into the back of the vehicle and rendering himself unconscious. The armadillo justice is best one in this thread. I have an opposite story where we punished our superior. When I was in South Korea in the mid-2000s, we had an absolutely sea of a lieutenant. He walked around like his crap didn't stink. Thought he knew everything there was to know. Pretty much like most LTs. One weekend a bunch of us were walking back from the PX, loaded up with beer and snacks for the weekend. Like each of us had at least a case of beer and a few bags each. Hands were totally full. Our LT walks past us and we nodded and said sir instead of saluting. Most officers won't make you put down all your crap just to salute, at least the good ones. This guy flips out about us not saluting and proceeds to PT the frick out of us for about 30 minutes. After that it was on. Anytime we saw this guy, we would grab everyone we could, form a line with about 20 feet distance between each person, and walk towards him. He would have to salute every single one of us. It didn't matter where he was. When we saw him, we had about 20 soldiers beelining towards him just to salute. The best was when he was on his cell phone cause he would have to put it down every 10 seconds just to salute all of us. This went on for about 3 weeks. Him saluting everyone all the time every single day. He finally got tired of it and asked us not to salute him anymore. I don't see the branch mentioned, but in the army, if your arms are legitimately full, you don't have to salute, and the same goes for the returning salute if the officer's hands are full. That was a crap move by the LT and the payback was well deserved. An airman I know forgot we had to all come in on a Monday morning. He was on swings and was still out of town. He finally came in 6 hours later. Our sergeant told him to stand at attention and left to do something and completely forgot about him. He stood at attention for 2 hours while another airman jokingly poked him with sticks. A basic training story. We were practicing taking apart and putting together our M16s. We were instructed to not let any piece fall on the ground or get lost, especially the firing pin. Sure enough, you hear the ringing of a firing pin that just hit the ground. Our TI comes running out. That trainee had to lay on the ground in front of our TI. Every time a different trainee walked by, the trainee in the ground had to yell, "Watch out, I'm a firing pin." For the next hour, our TI called every trainee over one at a time. In basic, when going to throw out some trash, left my rifle, which you are not supposed to do. Myself and 2 of my buddies had to hold on to our assault packs in one hand like a shield and long sticks in the other like a spear. Then we had to stack up in a line on a tree and push with our shields for 5 minutes with our spears raised yelling war cries. Apparently the Spartans did this for training. And apparently if I don't have my rifle in a combat situation, I will need to know how to do this. Yup, that's right out of Gates of Fire. Dang good book. One of my friends from my first base and I were swapping basic stories, and I think he had the scariest. On the first day of 3rd week they hadn't performed up to standards, and the MTI told them he'd be staying late that night to try to fix them. The MTI calls his wife to let her know he'd missed dinner and would be home late, and she blew the frick up. She was screaming at the MTI about how he's just using his job as an excuse, how he doesn't even care about her, and while all this is going on the MTI is just pleading with her. She hangs up on him, and the MTI looks at the flight with this expression of cold hate, and says he was going to his office for a minute to think of an appropriate way to punish the flight for their crap. Basic training is a lot of talk. The MTIs can PT you until your body gives out and scream at you, but they can't actually hurt you. In that moment though, as the room waited for the MTI to come back, they weren't so sure that would be the case. He was going to make them pay, and my friend said that was the only time in basic he felt true fear. It turns out, it was all an act. The MTI had had that genuinely happen during a previous flight, and it had terrified them into compliance so well he got his wife to pull it off every flight afterwards. Wow, that's brilliant. Mine just played really crappy hip hop music, though I guess that is better than no music. He also played Friday by Rebecca Black for about 2 hours while he made us do dress drills. That was literally impossible. Not my story. It was told to me by a Marine back in high school when I was in JROTC. He said back when he was in boot camp, His group was told they were going to be watching a movie that day. Apparently someone in charge had said to give his group a break that day, and they were to watch Full Metal Jacket. The guy, drill sergeant I think he was, who was telling them they were to watch the movie that day told them something around the lines of, "I don't know why they are giving you guys the right to watch a movie. The Marines and the movie never get to watch one. But orders are orders, so you will watch this movie." He then put everyone in formation, ordered them into parade rest, had one guy stand in front of formation and hold the VHS tape in front of him. The drill sergeant then said the film says that it is 118 minutes long, and so you will stand here and watch the movie for 118 minutes. Then he walked away and left the Marines there all standing and staring at the VHS tape in the hands of the Marine assigned to hold it up for everyone to watch. I was a USAF firefighter. OFNG at station did not properly do checkouts on his vehicle and didn't make sure his water tank and on tires on apparatus were good. After downtime, my fire chief told him to don his gear on and grab a big trash bag. He made him stand on the flight line side of the fire station facing the tower and told him that the weather system was down and they needed him to stand there to get the directions of the wind. He was there for 2 hours. Every time he put his hands down he would walk up to him and threaten to write him up and made up an AFI. When I was a young private in the infantry, back in about 1993, I got in trouble for having a 6-inch knife on my field gear. Knives of that size had to be stored in the arms room, go figure. I got a summarized Article 15, basically a slap on the wrist, which was 7 days extra duty, 7 days confined to barracks. The extra duty was cleaning up after the duty day, mopping and waxing the floors, taking out the trash from the admin offices, etc. Confinement to the barracks was meant to be the harsh part, but we lived in a semi-remote area of post, so AAFES opened a bar for the area in the basement of the barracks. Needless to say, I spent my 7 days confined to the barracks in the basement, enjoying some frosty beverages, darts, and bar food. To this day, I still don't know if my commander at the time was stupid enough to not know that there was a bar in our basement, or cool enough to not cars. I just found him on Facebook, and he did, in fact, cars a lot. Your commander is very cool, he does not cars for anything. Not military personnel, but told to me by someone who was. Guy had to dig a 6 feet deep hole and bury the newspaper that the CO had just finished reading. He digs the hole, buries the newspaper, and covers up the hole. It takes basically all day. He gets back to the CO and tells him he has buried the newspaper like he asked. The CO then asks him what was the date on that newspaper. He doesn't know, so he has to go get the newspaper he buried and see what date it is, rebury it, and tell his company. It was supposed to teach him the lesson of needing to pay attention to details. During Beast at USAFA, one of my fellow cadets started laughing at one of our flight NCOs whistling that to the left song. Carter went off on him. Basic Cadet Snow, are you laughing? Yes, sir. Why are you laughing? Do you know what happened today? No. See, Bruce Willis died today. Do you hate Bruce Willis? No, sir. Then why are you laughing at his death? No excuse. See, today is a day of national tragedy. We need to memorialize his death. Pick up one of those rocks. Does so. This is now the Bruce Willis Memorial Rock. What should we name it? Sir, I do not know. We're gonna name it Bruce. From now until the end of basic, you will carry Bruce with you at all times. If I ask you how Bruce is doing, you will show me Bruce and sound off yippee-ki-yay. So do you understand? Yes, sir. How's Bruce? Yippee-ki-yay, sir. Replying to myself, bleh, I know, but one of the other flights in my squadron had their command for forward march changed to Autobots. Roll out, they had to make the transformation sound from the old cartoon before they were allowed to start marching. Apologize for the length of this story in advance. I went to infantry basic CCO2/58 in the summer of '05. I had a really animated black drill SGT, who absolutely hated privates. I was not the strongest or the fastest by any means, so I made my money by not taking anything personally and being funny. When he would smoke me with push-ups for something, He would talk about how he hated me and wished he could find some obscure loophole in UCMJ that would allow him to kill me legally. I'd respond by thanking him, letting him know that I knew deep down that he loved me and that he wanted me to be the best soldier I could be. I'd tell him that I loved him too and appreciated his inspired leadership. Of course, this would cause him to crush me more, but it turned into a game that he seemed to enjoy. In any case, fast forward to the FTX we had to pass in order to graduate. I'm in a foxhole in the middle of fire and infested GA woods, and one of the Brocadic privates on profile runs down to me at a dead sprint and says Drill SGT needs you right away at the DS Hooch. I grab my crap and sprint up there as fast as I can. It sounded serious. I get there, all the leadership is standing around, the LT, all the Drill SGTs etc. Totally grim-faced and solemn. My DS, who always crushed me, always went out of his way to mess with me, puts his arm around me and says, "What? You are a good soldier. You don't deserve this. I'm sorry for your loss. We have a Red Cross message for you. I'm sorry, Private." I'm freaking out. I think somebody in my family was dead. I'm about to lose my crap as I open the Red Cross letter. I open it up and unfold the message. It reads the following. "What? Do 50 push-ups. I freaking hate you. VR. Drill SGT Asbury." Everybody bust up laughing and smoked me for a while before sending me back down to the woodline. That guy was a freaking artist. I'll never forget my DS. USMC here. In our unit we had one guy that would constantly hum songs. Well, one day our CO had enough of his behavior, so he tells him to report to his locker. So he goes to his locker and stands in front of it. CO tells him to get inside the locker. When he does, he shuts and locks the door with him inside. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a quarter and pushes it through the vent holes and tells the guy to start singing, and tells him that whenever someone puts a quarter in the slot he was to sing another song. This went on for 6 hours. The guy made around $15 in quarters and we were all in pain from laughing at him. Needless to say, he acquired the name Jukebox and never hummed again. Former Marine here. So there's this calisthenic exercise, the actual term I'm not sure of, that's called monkey suckers. I cannot stress enough how monkey suckers is merely a colloquialism. This will be important later. Anyway, this exercise looks really stupid. You grab your ankles and squat. So really, you do look like a copulating primate when you do it. During our squadron PT sessions, our CO liked to give our NCOs an opportunity to lead some exercises. One day, CPL Sharp was the chosen one. CPL Sharp was actually pretty dull, so he gets up in front of the entire unit and sounds off, "Your next exercise will be monkey suckers. I'll count the CAD." Before he can finish, our CO interrupts him. "CPL Sharp, what will our next exercise be for those of you keeping score?" That was his opportunity to redeem himself. "Monkey suckers, so swing and a miss. Sharp. Swing and a miss. LT Cobb right. Call sign. Not so." Then shakes his head in disbelief and announces to the squadron that CPL Sharp has now inherited the not so cool sign. Then, the good CPL had to write a ridiculously long essay, something like 10,000 words, on the mating habits of simian creatures. If you are or ever have been a trainee at Keesler Air Force Base, you know about dorm room inspections. Each dorm room has 2 occupants, 2 chests of drawers, 2 beds, 2 wall lockers, and 1 college dorm-sized refrigerator. Anything that isn't locked up has to be spotless during a dorm inspection. And yes, this includes the inside of the fridge, and the rubber gasket door seals of same fridge. It was Friday, and for some reason it was a pretty relaxed day. We all knew about and prepared for the upcoming inspection, and we were all looking forward to a fun and free weekend on the sunny Gulf Coast. My room inspection went fine. The training instructor, TI, went through the room and couldn't find enough demerits to cause us to lose our coveted weekend. He had an assistant following him with a clipboard, taking notes on demerits. As soon as the room was inspected, we were free for the weekend. I followed the TI and his assistant next door, because my friend and I were going to head out to New Orleans together that evening. The inspection for my friend and his roommate went mostly well, until the TI opened the fridge and looked inside. He froze. Then he backed up a step and straightened up. Pointing a finger into the fridge, he said, What is that? I could see it from the doorway. A large Louisiana-sized cockroach, legs up dead on the top shelf of the fridge. Or as we in the Air Force like to say, tango uniform. I knew my friends were in for it. This level of offense would warrant a weeds and seeds weekend of walking around the training compound removing weeds and cutting the grass. There was a lot of grass. My friend's roommate looked at the cockroach for a moment, then looked up and said, "I was saving that for later, sir." There was the strange noise of several muffled guffaws and a couple of cleared throats. The TI, to his credit, stayed completely deadpan. Food not in its proper container. 2 demerits. The TI's assistant made a notation on his clipboard. Yes, his voice was a little strangled, and he was turning red. Without another word, they left to inspect the next room. And that's how my friend and his roommate earned the name, the Roach Brothers. My dad was a CB, naval construction worker. He was 2 members of the village people in one package. During Vietnam, another guy on his team was a tinker who was constantly being teased by the other seamen because he would take things apart and end up losing a screw or bolt or something. One night the tinkerer was on watch with 2 other guys who gave him the most crap. The watchtowers they were in were hastily built 2-level shacks with a watch point up top and an enclosed room below. So the tinkerer is sitting in the dark all alone in the top of the shack looking around at loose nails and the gaps in the floorboards when an idea comes to him. He drops a nail through the gap which makes a pinging noise on the ground when it lands on the floor below where his abusers are snoozing. That wakes them up and they ask him what the heck he's lost this time. To which he responds by asking them to find the pin for his grenade which he just dropped. Then kicked back and restrained laughter while they began frantically searching the floor for the non-existent pin. I just realized my father also rode motorcycles and is half Cherokee. He is the village people. A fellow lance corporal at the time let out a sneeze. Huge snot rocket pops out and lands on his cheek. I mean just one beast of a thing. My sergeant standing in front of him talking to him while this happened let out a "what the frick you nasty bee." Put it back, and right back up it went. Funniest crap I have seen. You saw madam must be confused. Now notice that spider on the wall behind you. Pocket sand and run. Thanks. Note to self, don't get caught pooping in front of your sergeant. When I was in 8, advanced individual training, we had a DS that was pretty bizarre when it came to punishments. He devised this bizarre ritual where a person would have to walk around with a silly dog trophy if they did something to frick up. Could be anything. Marched out of step, got to formation late, etc. They had to have that dang trophy 24/7 until another person fricked up. Then they would get the dang trophy. He would actually call a formation so the trophy would be transferred to the newest 8-up person. The person surrendering the trophy would do 10 push-ups. Then the person who received the trophy would do 10 and take the trophy. He'd encourage us to try to steal the trophy from the 8-up solider. I can't recall what the reward was for swiping the trophy. This went on for a good part of medic school. Another punishment wasn't unusual. If you did something wrong during formation, you'd have to stay in the front leaning rest. But a solider fell asleep while he was in the front leaning rest. How he managed that, I haven't a clue. But we were sleep deprived. Despite the fact that we were supposed to be in school, not in basic. The DS went behind him, cracked up laughing, then yelled at him and scared the crap out of him. Bravo Co got the rep as being the shittiest company to be assigned to for medic school. Thanks, DS Massey. USMC here. Lots of stories, but this happened to me and I thought it was funny. I was in the Mojave Desert doing mock vehicle searches. It was at least 118 degrees and our platoon sergeant told us that if you had any of the overheating symptoms to report them. So I was feeling a little dizzy, so I told him I needed to get off my feet for a bit. No problem, he said, and sent me to a walled off tent that the Navy docs set up to cool off a bit. Anyway, as soon as I got in there the Navy docs asked me why I came in and I said I was a little dizzy and needed to sit down. Well, they stripped me down naked, threw me in a tub of ice, and shoved a thermometer up my butt. Dang USGT. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.